All right, let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniela Rus. I'm the director of CSAIL, and I am delighted to welcome you to the Dertusos Distinguished Lecture today. And I am excited to introduce our special guest, Professor Fei-Fei Li, who's coming to us from Stanford, where she is a Sequoia Capital Professor of Computer Science and the co-director of the Stanford Institute for Human-Centered Artificial Intelligence. Now, anyone here who has done any image-based processing of photos or shouts image requests to their phones owes a massive debt to Fei-Fei. She's a pioneer in machine learning, a founding mother of deep learning for image data. And this is an area that has attracted so much attention and has made so much progress over the last decade or so. Fei-Fei's groundbreaking work on ImageNet has inspired thousands of people around the world to study machine learning and spurred groundbreaking applications in areas such as self-driving cars, robotics, image and speech recognition. Fei-Fei conducted her research for several years at UIUC and Princeton before becoming a professor at Stanford. And she spent a 2-year sabbatical at Google Cloud as its chief scientist of AI and machine learning. Fei-Fei is a tireless advocate for AI for Good and co-founded a nonprofit organization, AI for All, whose mission is to educate the next generation of AI technologists, thinkers, and leaders by promoting diversity and inclusion through human-centered AI principles. Fei-Fei is the recipient of many awards. I would like to highlight membership in the National Academies of Engineering and the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, membership in Council of Foreign Relations, and my favorite, Fei-Fei is a technology honoree by Elle magazine. We are honored to have her today to hear her thoughts on how researchers can strive to make AI more effective. Please join me in welcoming Fei-Fei.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you. It's just so wonderful to be back at MIT. It's, ever since I was a student, I came here quite a bit for inspiration.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so it's also just, been such a long time since we see a room full of real people and students. Okay, so this is, I know I'm in a CS lab, CSAIL. This talk is slightly broader than a pure technical talk. I made this talk keeping in mind to share this with both technologists and humanists. So, but please, I hope to have a good discussion at the end of this talk with all of you. The title is What We See and What We Value, AI with a Human Perspective. So let me just take you back a little bit in history before we look out towards the future. And the history goes to 540 million years ago. And life on Earth was very interesting at that time. All the animals lived in the waters or primordial soup. And to be honest, there aren't that many animal species around. And they float around and enjoy life. And then something really mystical happened in a very short period of time considered by geologists, which is about 10 million years. Fossil studies have told us that the number of animal species just exploded. And zoologists call this the Cambrian explosion or the Big Bang of evolution. And there are many theories about why such things happened. Could be climate change, the chemical component of the ocean, and other reasons, food change. And one of the leading theories that's quite influential and proposed by an Australian zoologist, Andrew Parker, says that conjectured the Cambrian explosion is triggered by the sudden evolution of vision, which set off an evolutionary arms race where animals either evolved or died. So since that point on, the evolution of vision, perception, as well as the nervous system of animals had just never stopped evolving. In fact, from these very primitive animals to the humans walking on Earth, nature has come a long way in creating biologically intelligent agents. And vision, or visual intelligence, has become a primary sensory system of intelligent or just animals in general, whether we're talking about insects or reptiles or mammals. And for us humans, we use vision for many things. We use vision for communication, for entertainment, for work, for navigation, for survival, and all that. So it's been a 540 million years journey of nature to create a visually intelligent machine as intricate and as powerful as our human vision. How long did it take computers? Well, the answer is still out there, but the history of computer vision coincided very much with the history of AI, which is, by all measurement, a pretty young field, right? We are a little more than half a century old. One of the urban legends of the beginning of computer vision started here in the very campus of MIT, that back in 1966, in one summer, a professor had a very big and optimistic dream that within one summer, he can use summer workers, very smart MIT students, to effectively construct a significant part of a visual system. That is, as one of the urban legend goes, the beginning of the field of computer vision. And the good news is that the field of computer vision continued to blossom since then. The bad news is I don't think we quite finished that significant part of the visual system yet, and it's been many summers. But where the field is today is incredible, right? Whether you're looking at assistive driving or self-driving car navigation systems, you're looking at the basic technology of image understanding, or I'm sure all of you are familiar with these recent generative models that's taking the world by storm, such as DALL-E 2. Vision technology, vision intelligence in machines has just blossomed. So for the rest of the talk, I just want to share with you a personal perspective on where have we come from and where we're heading. And the talk is organized in 3 parts. We'll start with trying to learn to build machine vision system or building AI to see what humans see. And then we'll get to see if we can push AI to see what humans don't see. And then we'll finish with building AI to see what humans want to see. So let's start with what humans see. It's actually worthwhile to take a moment to appreciate how incredible our very own eyes are. And you're going to quickly learn how much I love MIT, because I'm going to cite a lot of MIT work. One of the early cognitive vision science work by Molly Potter, a professor here, and her colleagues, shows that humans have an incredible ability to recognize objects. In this example, I'm showing you frames presented at 10 hertz, 100 milliseconds per frame. And pretend you are my human subject, and your task is to detect a person in one of the frames. And I think most of you would nod if you see it. And it's an easy task, right? Even though you've never seen this video, I didn't tell you anything about the object other than a person, the gesture, the location, the appearance, and nothing. Yet you have a very robust ability to do object recognition. Furthermore, at the turn of the century, or a little before the turn of the century, a group of French neuroscientists have measured that ability and put a timestamp in humans' incredible ability to categorize complex natural scenes of scenes with animals or scenes without animals. And I'm showing you some examples here. Simon Thorpe and his students, collaborators, measure that you see, using EEG measurement, you see a differential signal rising out of the EEG reading 150 milliseconds after the onset of the stimulus. So it's saying that as fast as 150 milliseconds, the brain is capable of categorizing complex natural scenes as scenes with animals or scenes without animals. For those of you who work with transistors, 150 milliseconds is not that impressive, but if you think about the wetware, the speed of synaptic connections, and the stages of decision-making from retina to thalamus to primary visual cortex and up, is actually really impressive. Once again, back to MIT. In addition to showing how robust our brain visual system is in recognizing object, in putting a temporal stamp on the speed of visual recognition, MIT, a bunch of MIT researchers led by Nancy Kabisher and her colleagues also show there are neural correlates in the brain that are dedicated to important object recognition functionality, such as faces or places or body parts. So all this is this body of research in starting in the 70s or even earlier of last century is telling us something that has become an important North Star for computer vision research at the turn of the century, which is object recognition is a fundamental building block of visual intelligence. Humans can do it. Humans can do it in a very robust way, and can we make computers do it? And that was the question that our field had tackled for quite a while. For those of you who are not familiar with computer vision, just briefly speaking, roughly speaking, object recognition is the capability for, say, a computer agent or biological agent to recognize an object when given a picture. In this case, an animal wombat. And if you just reflect about this, it's actually mathematically a really hard problem because wombats are 3D animals in the world. And mathematically speaking, there are infinite ways of rendering a wombat picture in a 2D image, whether it's different lighting, texture, background clutter, occlusion, self-occlusion, camera viewing angles, and all that. So it's not an easy problem. The brain has an incredible ability to recognize it, to make us feel effortless, but to make computers do this took a while. The very early attempts in our field in terms of recognizing objects started in back 60s and 70s, and at that time there were good conceptual intuitions of composing shapes to recognize objects. So there has been heroic research effort, mostly hand designing shapes and features and really hand engineering models to capture the compositionality of objects. They're beautiful conceptual studies, but there's a big gap between what they can do and what the models can do in real world. And then fast forward to roughly the turn of the century, became a very vibrant time or era of marrying computer vision tasks with machine learning techniques, especially creating models that are starting to learn parameters, but mostly learning parameters of hand-designed features or building blocks of objects. But here, there's many wonderful papers to cite. Many came from MIT of whether we're looking at random field models, BaseNet, boosting, and all that. So something also happened around that time that has a very important implication for the rest of the history is the advances of internet. Around that time, around the turn of the century, internet brought us data. So in the field of computer vision, when we are looking at object recognition tasks, we start to work with data sets. Data sets that can train our models and can benchmark our algorithms. One of the most influential data set was called Pascal VOC. Many of you are too young to remember this. It came from Europe, and the data set has had about 20 to 30,000 images across 20 object categories. It became the bread and butter data set for object recognition research in computer vision. And that was a time that I became a young assistant professor, and something really bugged me. There was a number I learned when I was a graduate student, and that number stayed with me for a long time. So I'm gonna give this number a name. It's called Biedermann number. Nobody has called this before. So Professor Irv Biedermann is a psychologist, and he guesstimated or estimated that humans, little humans by age, say 6 or 7, can recognize at least 30,000 visual categories. He used vocabularies, English vocabularies, and some visual and some heuristics to estimate at this number. And this number was in sharp contrast with the 20 categories that the entire field of computer vision was working on. And that was the motivation for my own research. Concurrently at that time, my colleagues around the world, again, many here at MIT, are starting to recognize the need for a bigger data set. And my students and I just went a little crazy, and I downloaded the internet we can get at that time, more than 1 billion images, and created a data set of 22,000 categories, trying to be close to Biedermann's number. Consisted of 15 million hand-curated, labeled, categorized images of objects. So that was the ImageNet project. Honestly, people ask me, why did you make ImageNet? That's a question I get a lot. I think the motivation of making ImageNet was really trying to solve the real object recognition problem at world scale. But also, we recognized that machine learning at that time probably needed a different way of thinking, because we're seeing a lot of overfitting of hand-designed models, or actually hand-designed features with these smaller models that are just not performing at the level we want. And lo and behold, it was actually true. The scale of ImageNet was driving a new class of models that now we know are called neural network. Again, to this audience, I don't need to explain what's neural network. I'm sure all of you have heard of it and are coding with this. The fundamental building block of a neural network is a neuron-like node that takes input from other nodes and sends output. And then if you layer them together hierarchically, you can, even at that time, even 10 years ago, a typical model would have millions of nodes and hundreds of millions of parameters. I mean, we're talking about orders of magnitude smaller than what neural network look like today. But it was one of those moments that back in the beginning of the second decade of 21st century, we start to see neural network performing well on this North Star problem, object recognition. For example, giving the network a cat image, it's able to learn through the tuning of the weights to recognize a cat, not only in that kind of picture, but also in these kind of natural pictures, and recognizing different objects or even small objects in real world photos. And then the special moment came. So once we released the ImageNet, we started hosting ImageNet challenge of classifying 1,000 object classes over more than 1 million images. And 2012 was the year that Jeff Hinton and his student entered the competition with a deep convolutional neural network model. Now people just call it AlexNet, of 7 layers. And I still remember vividly that evening when we saw the result of ImageNet challenge, how exciting that moment was, seeing AlexNet cutting the error of ImageNet challenge from previous years, drastically cutting it down. So many people now, in hindsight, I think most of the students sitting here are born as native deep learning students. That's probably when you remember the history. And of course, if you look at the winning algorithm of ImageNet over the years, every one of them have been driving the field forward in very significant ways. And frankly, I lost count of how incredible all these winning algorithms are, not only pushing the performance above human level, but also the innovation of the models, the computational efficiency of the models, just incredible progress have been made in the last 10 years in computer vision. And it's also very humbling to see the contribution of ImageNet in the research community, and of course, together with data, GPUs as well as the algorithm advances, the world is starting to see a whole different kind of technological revolution that many people call it the deep learning revolution. If you have not been sleeping the past 10 years, you'll probably get some kind of news article about deep learning every other hour. Or if you're following industry news, whether you're looking at the market size of computer vision technology or the number of startups, it's just been blossoming. But in the meantime, back in the lab, we actually quickly started to ask ourselves what is beyond ImageNet, because clearly human perception is not about just telling us the discrete objects in an image. In this case, I'm about to show you 2 pictures in this on the screen, and they both contain, the best object detector would tell us that each picture contains a person and an animal llama, and from that you can infer they're probably the same kind of picture or telling the same story, but the truth is it's not. If you look at the pixels, the stories of the pictures are very, very different. And I remember when I was a graduate student, one of my favorite papers I read was by Jeremy Wolf, not very far from you guys, at Harvard, who wrote this paper about what do we really see in a scene, or what's our visual memory. And he specifically said that, that object alone is not enough. Relationships between objects must be coded. That paper, I think it's my favorite paper, not only by the content, it's also only 2 pages. So I highly recommend you read this. So encoding relationships becomes a very important goal in our research. So my students and I proposed this new representation called scene graph representation in encoding visual relationships. In this representation, if you look at an image like this, the objects are encoded in what I show as red, pink boxes, and their pairwise predicate relationships is encoded in the green boxes, and their individual attributes, whether it's color, texture, and other attributes, are encoded in these purplish blue boxes. So even a simple picture like this can give you a very rich scene graph representation. We got ourselves got our hands on a larger set of these images and created this new data set called, well, not new anymore, but at that time, new data set called Visual Genome and have labeled millions and millions of relationships, objects using this data set. And we can use this to predict object relationships. There are relationships that are common, and our algorithm can predict, such as person riding horse or person wearing hat. But using a compositional representation of scene graph, we can also try do zero-shot training, such as this particular image is a horse wearing hat, or in this case, person sitting on fire hydrant is a rare occurrence, but our algorithm is capable of recognizing this. Of course, at that time, we outperformed the state of the art in zero-shot generalization, but things have moved quite fast. We were not content to just predict or recognize visual relationships, so we went a step further in storytelling. Frankly, that has been my dream since I started grad school, and I always thought visual storytelling will happen in about 100 years. But the speed of progress was just shocking, especially given deep learning tools. So back in 2014, 2015, my students, Andre Kapathy, Justin Johnson, and so on, we started combining language models with vision models and create algorithms to do image captioning with one sentence, or dense captioning using multiple short sentences to describe a scene, or even paragraph captioning. And these results you're seeing is already old for today, but it was progressing really quickly. Of course, visual scenes are not static, and I'm right now fascinated by human activities, especially complex human activities that encodes relationships between humans, as well as relationship between humans and objects. So this is relatively new work we published last year, and then it's coming out in NeurIPS this year, called MoMA, Multi-Object, Multi-Actor Activity Understanding. We're rolling out this data set as well, where we use a spatial temporal graph representation to predict these MoMA relationships in dynamic scenes. So this is a lot more computationally demanding than static scenes. So as you can see, we have continued to push the deeper understanding of images and videos since object recognition. Of course, the field of computer vision has also seen some really exciting progress. None of this is my work, but I love them. Of course, 3D vision, the NERF and all the NERF++ has been just incredible. Pose estimation, image semantic segmentation, generative models. Computer vision has just been, I just think I feel so lucky to live in this world because it's just so exciting. So in short, I showed you a number of work focusing on building AI to see what humans see. One moment or to just pause and appreciate is that data compute, neural network algorithm help us to usher in the deep learning revolution in AI. But my personal research has always benefited tremendously from learning from cognitive and brain sciences. And I hope to continue to see that brain science and cognitive science inspire newer generation AI technology. And for this part of the work, many collaborators as students and postdocs have worked in this, so I won't be able to call out each of their name. So let's move on to part 2, building AI to see what humans don't see. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm unable to recognize all the dinosaurs here in this picture. So as much as Biederman has said that we humans easily recognize tens of thousands of categories, the visual world is just so rich that, if you go down the dimension of more and more detailed understanding of objects, very quickly humans are pushed to the limit. So in fact, there are, last time I checked, more than 10,000 species of birds. I don't know how many you recognize. I can probably recognize 2. And we also found out, I learned through a research project on the right, there are more than 3,000 types of cars if you count make, model, and year, and built since the 1970s. So all these are really detailed recognition tasks. In computer vision, we call them fine-grained object categorization. So my students and I, a few years ago, have been fascinated by this problem and worked on various papers. The one work I want to highlight is by Timney Jabru, who used fine-grained object detectors of different models of cars to actually learn neighborhoods. We downloaded street view pictures of 200 American cities and used car detectors to learn about these neighborhoods and correlate with American census data and find strong correlation that car models alone can correlate strongly with income, education level, and even voting patterns of a neighborhood. So it's a really interesting lens to look at our world through fine-grained object categorization. That's one way to go beyond what humans can, because typically we're not very good at fine-grained object recognition. But let me also bring out another dimension of humans' limitation. All of you, or some of you, have heard of the Stroop test. This is a fun visual illusion. Try to call out by yourself, not the words, but the color of the words. Go from left to right and top to bottom. So in this case, it would be red, orange, green, purple. It's just so painful. Even though a computer would have no problem. Here's another experiment. Some of you have seen it over and over again, change blindness. There are 2 pictures that are alternating. They look pretty similar. There's one part of this picture that is different, just one part that's changed. Nod your head if you have seen it. Okay. Last time I asked you to detect a person in that video, all of you were like this. But this time it's not that easy, right? So it turned out it's the jet engine. And I love this reaction. So yeah, it's pretty big, exactly. I guarantee it's on your retina, the pixels or so, attention is our limit. And we're laughing at this example, but you will not laugh if I tell you medical errors is the 3rd leading cause of American patients' fatality in our hospitals and medical systems. So things humans don't see can have fatal consequences. So we started, for example, surgery rooms. It turns out one of the most important things doctors and nurses must do in surgery room is to account for the instruments and all the objects. And how do they do this? They do it by hand. And can you imagine if we can use computer vision algorithm to help, because if they don't find something, well, first of all, chances are it's left in the body of a patient. Second, you sometimes have to pause the surgery for hours to look for that item. So if we can have a computer vision algorithm to continue to track this, this could be really useful. This is really just a proof of concept. We haven't even published this work of using computer vision algorithm to track sponges. Sponges on a surgical platform. And this could use the fine grain recognition technology in a real world setting. So, attention is a limit. There are other limits. Let me show you another visual illusion made by your MIT professor. My favorite visual illusion. All of you have seen this, so I didn't even try to test you. If you just look at the A and B checkerboard, I don't know if Ted is in the audience, but this is Ted's illusion. You know, they look like they're different grayscale, but then if you actually put the grayscale bar connecting them, you realize there's the same grayscale. Of course, your visual system is tricking you through its prior knowledge and understanding of the shape and lighting of the world. Related, here's another visual illusion. I don't know, some of you are too young to even know who they are. So nod your head if you see Clinton and Gore. Yeah, right? Do you really see Clinton and Gore? Okay. If you really look, it's Clinton and Clinton. But the visual context, the background knowledge, the clothing, the hairstyle made to see it in a biased way. So human vision is biased. Human mind is biased. Human knowledge is biased. While this is fun, bias is not necessarily fun. So again, MIT computer scientist and poet Joy Buluwini beautifully captured the hurtfulness of visual bias using a face recognition algorithm. She composed this poetry called AI Anti-a-Woman, and to capture this kind of the harm and damage that AI bias can cause. So this is an area of research that a lot of people are working on. My lab has been also collaborating with colleagues on how do we mitigate the human bias that AI might amplify and work towards a constructive solution. So again, sometimes not seeing is harmful, but sometimes not seeing is important. So in fact, it can be profoundly important. Consider the value of privacy. There is a reason sometimes we don't want people to see, whether it's in healthcare condition or in surveillance condition. So in vision, I'm actually very excited that my colleagues, the field, is starting to wake up to working on techniques towards privacy computing. And here I'm just listing a subset of privacy computing related to computer vision. There are there are other areas of privacy computing, such as face blurring, dimensionality reduction, body masking, federated learning, homomorphic encryption, and actually differential privacy. These are, I just listed a couple of papers we published. I'm not going to get into the details, but this is an area that I'm really excited by. There's one work I want to highlight that actually is not, I'm an author, but it really is the brainchild of my colleague Juan Carlos Niebles and his students. And it's actually a clever way to combine hardware and software for privacy computing. And the goal here is, in many cases, for example, medical cases or security cases, we do need to recognize human gestures in a video. But how do we recognize human gesture while we protect human identity? So they innovated a new lens, literally a physical lens that distort inputs, the videos, to the point that you don't even see the identity of the people here compared to other kind of distortions. But combined with the backend algorithm, while the lens protects the privacy of person's identity, the algorithm still recognizes the proper human movements and activity. So I think this is actually really exciting, this line of work of combining hardware and software advances in privacy-aware computing is something that I think it's really interesting. So in short, I just shared with you a few work on building AI to see what humans don't see. And I want to emphasize that AI can amplify and exacerbate many profound issues that plagued humanity for ages. These issues didn't start with AI, but AI can amplify them, like bias and privacy infringement. So we, even as technologists, we must commit to study, forecast, and guide AI's development and practice by keeping in mind people and societies, the impact to people and society. And a lot of this require a multidisciplinary approach. And here are the collaborators and students who have contributed to the work I mentioned. Okay, so let's get to the last part of this talk, part 3, building AI to see what humans want to see. What do I mean? Well, this is really a title trying to reflect what do we fear about AI and how do we mitigate that fear. Well, I think if you ask public opinion these days, one biggest fear of AI is labor replacement. Whether we're talking about truck drivers or radiologists or factory workers, those of us who work in robotics and AI will look at this and say, are you kidding me? We cannot even, get a robot to pass a block. But I do think it's really, it's a respectful topic, and we do need to recognize the job disruption that technology is creating, especially these generative models now, is definitely leading the way of changing the nature of some jobs. And of course, you see the titles like this everywhere. While we as public hears about the job threats of AI, I, as a researcher, especially researcher in healthcare, hear a different story. There is a serious human labor shortage in healthcare. For example, by next year, we're talking about 2 months, America will have a 1 million nurse shortage. And this has dire consequences. Our nurses are overworked, over-fatigued, underpaid, and how do we even solve that problem? And if you look at, this is also connected to the issues of medical errors, and if you connect that with the aging population, we're having more and more, we're living longer and longer, and we have more and more elders that needs help. So I often tell people who worry about AI replacing humans is, can we replace that word replace? And really imagine AI augmenting human capabilities. And I want to share with you 2 lines of work. One is in healthcare, another is in robotics. So in healthcare, I've been working on this for 10 years or more than 10 years. It turned out that there are many moments there can be medical errors. So there are many dark spaces in healthcare that can lend themselves to errors, whether we're talking about surgical rooms, we're talking about clerical conditions, pharmacy, senior homes, bedside care, pediatric or ambulatory or emergency rooms. So in general, healthcare is a very busy, complex space, as sometimes things change really fast, and we constantly need to monitor the safety and health of patients, but we don't necessarily have that bandwidth or technology. So can we imagine that smart sensors in the form of ambient intelligence that combines ML algorithms help our doctors and nurses to glean health critical insights and become part of the safety net for our patient? I've been working on this for 10 years, and a couple of years ago, we published this fairly extensive Nature review article on everything we've been doing in ambient intelligence. So I'm only gonna just highlight a couple of things we talked about in this fairly long paper, and if you're interested, you can download this paper. One is actually a project on hand hygiene. It turned out, and we started this before COVID, it turned out hand hygiene is important to reduce hospital-acquired infection. And some of you might be horrified to even know this. Hand hygiene kills 3 times more people than car accidents every year in America. I mean, not hand hygiene, hospital-acquired infection. Yeah. Continue washing your hands. And the improper practice of hand hygiene protocol is actually one of the leading reasons for hospital-acquired infection, especially for clinicians, because they go from patient to patient, room to room, and they carry a lot of germs. And what do? How do we solve this problem? Most the hospitals use human auditors to observe. And it's just expensive, biased, sparse, and so on. Even technology like RFID is just not sufficient. And so we are collaborating with Stanford Hospital by putting smart sensors, like a depth sensor, connect sensor, and using computer vision algorithm in the back end to detect the human movement or activity of washing hands. Here you're seeing the green boxes indicate clinicians have properly gelled their hand before entering patient room. Here's improper entrance. We compare this with ground truth. Our algorithm performs on par with ground truth and better than 1, 3, and 4 human observers. A second project is ICU patient mobility. It turned out that proper movement in ICU, hospitalization is really important for the recovery of the patient. Many of you are too young to even realize this. ICU is where patients fight for their life, and it's really a pretty intense space. And again, doctors issue these mobility protocols, but how do we assure quality? And RFID is, again, not sufficient, and human observers are not sufficient. So we're collaborating with Stanford Hospital and Utah Hospital to use these sensors installed in these ICU rooms. And for now, we have tested a 4-way classification of classifying getting out of bed, getting in bed, getting out of chair, getting in chair, to see if our algorithm can do this. And long story short, we could, and this is very promising for augmentative technology to help our doctors and nurses to assess the quality of patient mobility. Of course, there's a lot more smart sensors can do in helping aging in place, whether it's to predict and prevent unsafe events, or monitor mild symptoms, or managing chronic conditions such as infection prediction, mobility assessment, sleep pattern understanding, and dietary pattern assessment. So these are all the things that we imagine smart sensors can do to augment human doctors and nurses and to keep our patients safe. Can we imagine even more? I am personally very excited, care a lot about the aging population. And I'm very excited by also the potential of robotics in helping our aging population. They're not to replace the importance of human care, but they might become handy. So there's a lot of conjecture and prediction of how robots can become, or household robots one day can become a really helpful agent to not only our elderly, but even for us. But don't get too excited. The reality of robot is pretty, far from that. This is an example of a robot that just miserably failed trying to place a box on a cart. So while there has been a lot of progress made in robotic research, and I speak as someone who feels like a student of robotics, so this is really to acknowledge so much has been happening in robotics, but in general, a lot of the work we see in robotic learning literature for unstructured environment is focusing on skill level tasks and short horizon goals, like, putting a cup on the table or opening a drawer. And on top of that, the kind of environments or experiments that have been demonstrated in robotic research tends to be fairly artificial, small scale, and tend to be experimenter-picked tasks and setup, and lack the standard benchmark and metrics. And if one day we're hoping this can go into the household, we're talking about a real world that's ecologically complex, dynamic and uncertain, diverse, interactive and social, and has a ton of tasks. So how do we close that gap of what we're experimenting with this goal? Of course, there are many paths. I just want to propose one path. And of course, we're inspired by what's been happening in computer vision and NLP community, that big, diverse, and ecologically motivated data sets and environments have driven computer vision and NLP progress. So can we imagine a new North Star for robotic learning and embodied AI? And this is actually the last project I want to share with you is a new work by my lab on an ecological robotic learning environment and a large diverse set of activities. It's called Behavior, Benchmark for Everyday Household Activities in Virtual Interactive Ecological Environment. So I didn't expect laughters for this, but sure. So since I'm claiming so much about this household ecological activities, let me try to prove my point. We want to be human-centered, and we don't want to make assumptions on what activities we should enable robots to do. So let me do a test. So what would you like a robot to help you with, okay? So I'll test a couple of things. Just say yes or no. Do you like the robot to help you to clean the kitchen floor? Okay, good. Shoveling the snow in Boston? Okay, folding laundry? Okay, I actually like folding laundry, but never mind. Cooking breakfast? Okay, I'm getting a mixture. Last question. Opening Christmas gift. Okay, if you say yes, I want to know why. Well, actually, paper cut would be a good reason. So you can see, right? We humans have agency, and we need to respect that. So in fact, my students and I did this massive study. We took government data about household activities from the US, from Europe. We try to be more diverse in the cultures and countries, but I have to admit we're a little more Western Hemisphere centric right now. We take these government data and pruned out 2,000 household everyday activities, and then we invited 1,400 Amazon Mechanical Turk participants to really tell us what are the tasks they want robots to help them with, to rank them. And then we got this rank, and you can see that opening Christmas gift is kind of low on the rank. Also, playing squash is really, we have to defend our human agency and do not allow robots to play squash. So if you're thinking about squash or ping pong robot playing, you should think twice for your project. And we did a little bit of a Disney clustering, and the top 1,000 tasks that we want robots to help humans cluster towards cleaning and simple shopping and cooking. So anyway, so we've identified the 1,000 everyday household activities that we feel good. We feel that humans want robots help. What else do we need to create behavior? We need a very, very ecological, diverse real-world environments. So we scanned 50 real-world scenes, from apartments to restaurants to stores to homes to offices, and digitize them in 3D. We also acquired 5,000 plus 3D object models, meaning across 1,200 categories. Some of them are articulated. They come with all kinds of properties. We have a list of 30 plus properties. And we're ready to create an environment for robotic training. I want to take a 30-second digression on object-centric representation. In addition to this project, we have a separate project by postdoc Rohan Gao, who is actually looking at multimodality representation for objects. And I'm not going to get into this work, but it's really cool work called Object Folder, where there's a data set of tactile, audio, and vision data on 3D objects. This is not part of behavior, but I did want to bring this up, so let me just skip this. So now we're ready. We have the task, the human tasks. We have the environments, the 3D scenes. We have the 3D object assets. We're now ready to create an ecological simulation environment to put all this in. And why do we want to do simulation? Do we want to do real-world robot? The truth is, we do want to do real-world robot, but this is a longer conversation. But simulation, in my opinion, is part of the critical path, because this can give us infinite amount of data. It's safe, and it has the degree of reproducibility that just real world, it's just not easy to come. I want to acknowledge there has been wonderful progress in simulation environments. Many of them, actually some of them, come from MIT and related labs, and they all have their strengths and limitations. Behavior strives to be physically, perceptually realistic. We are collaborating with NVIDIA's Omniverse group and created the simulator called OmniGibson, where I'm showing you examples of thermal effects, transition machines, lighting and reflection, fluids, deformability, transparency, and we tested perceptual photorealism on a group of human participants using a user study and behaviors level of realism came across very high in terms of the perceptual realism score. And here's an example of also realistic physical interactions in terms of deformable as well as fluid object. And we put all this in a table, and I'm not gonna get into the details. Given how late I am, I'm gonna just pretty much finish. We also, our goal is to create a new wave of projects towards solving everyday household activities in simulation and eventually in real environment. But one question is, how does today's algorithm do? We use 3 household activities to benchmark today's algorithm. Store decoration, collecting trash, and cleaning tables. And the short answer is, if we use a soft actor critic, one of the state-of-the-art RL algorithm, and if we don't give any privileged information, whether it's action primitives or any memory boost, the performance is 0. So I'm actually very excited by this number because it shows there's a lot we can improve. But if we do give some privileged information in terms of action primitive, you start to see improvements and so on. But the take-home message here is behavior is really, really hard. And it's also really long horizon. It's complex, multi-step, and this. We're also creating a real physical lab and the digital twin of that physical lab in behavior to test sim to real transfer. And we actually have a mobile manipulation robot. We actually named it Marvin, this is Marvin. It's a Tiago robot. Trying to actually successfully do picking up bottles, and I think Marvin is going to put it to the trash can, and but Marvin makes a lot of mistakes. So I think this here, Marvin just completely failed to navigate to the right bottle. Here, Marvin is trying to pick up the bottle and failed, and here Marvin didn't place the cup in the right place. So there's a long way to go. I'm gonna pretty much stop, but this is a teaser video, 30-second video of behavior and giving you a sense of the complexity of the environment. You're seeing in the background the different environment and different physics and simulation that behavior can support. We're trying very hard to support realism in physics as well as in perception. Okay, so we haven't lost our original goal. One day we want to build a household robot in unstructured environment, but there's a long way to go. Hopefully behavior is one step that can help us. And the goal here, really, all this is to say that there's a lot we can do to build AI to see and do what humans want to see, want robots to see and do. And we really believe AI must augment humanity, not replace humanity. And these are the students involved in this. And I'm gonna skip the last part, which is talking about HAI. But I see Daniela is standing up. So basically, in addition to our own lab, we have a lot of multidisciplinary collaborations in this. I do want to say one thing, because a lot of you asked me this question: is should technologists just do technology? Well, it's your own choice, but at HAI, we believe education and policy outreach is really important, especially in today's age, given the impact of AI to our society. So HAI is doing a lot of educational work to our policymakers as well as media and journalists. We're also helping the Biden administration to build up a national research resource, resource, and I'm on one of the 12 people task force helping this. So, in conclusion, that was a kind of a long talk on some of the work we have done in the past few years on what we see and what we value, and hopefully you get the message that we're advocating for a human-centered approach to AI. Thank you very much.
Of computer vision and machine learning. So we have time for a couple of quick questions. Anybody, what's on your mind? Okay, there's a question in the back. Please speak loudly.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, first of all. I found it very interesting with the parts, in particular, where you tied it to biology and how humans see. And I'm curious your thoughts on something we do as humans with our vision that is quite errant, I think, is using it to predict. If someone's running at me with a smile versus running at me with a scowl, I might respond differently. And sometimes I read that instance very wrong. What can computers do to help us maybe be predictive with these images? And is there the right time series data out there, we believe, to help with this?
If you are particularly asking about sentiment prediction, rather than the physical trajectory prediction, I would say there is not enough work. In computer vision, understanding human expression is a relatively small area of research focusing on, like headshot, face expression, pretty much coarsely, like half a dozen expressions like anger, happiness, surprise. That area of research, what you have described is a much more ecological setting. The person is moving maybe towards the viewer, and it might be uncertainty, and how to do sentiment prediction in that kind of setting is just not, I'm not aware of much work in that yet.
Good topic for the students.
Exactly.
Area, excellent. Maybe you could do your thesis on that. Okay, a question here in the front.
All right. Then why should we learn, think, and act for human-centered artificial intelligence?
What should we do for human-centered artificial intelligence? It depends on what you're doing. I just think when we create technology, there are many opportunities for us to keep in mind the human values. For example, data integrity. No matter what you work in, where is the source of bias? And how is that data created? We can think about privacy issues. We can think about human augmentation, human impact, human agency. We can think about the ethical framework of doing the research. So the human-centeredness is not one thing. It's a way of thinking about technology in both development as well as in deployment.
Okay, question in the...
Hi, I'm Gabriela from Brazil. You mentioned your work, you mentioned policy and AI, and also your work with diversity and AI. I'd love to hear what you're doing in terms of data, diversity in AI, but in particular related to the developing countries and how that impacts data sovereignty.
That's actually quite a loaded question. I think data, so data sovereignty, developing country, and diversity, they can each be answered in different aspects. I think data sovereignty is an issue that policymakers are paying close attention. Europe had GDPR, but that's not enough, or some people might say it was not well informed from a technological point of view, so it has its own issues. I know that the US and many governments are looking at this. I don't know specifically about Brazil. I've also been seeing that more and more on the international stage that culturally aware data compute is becoming a real topic. And this is something, especially for those of us living in the US, tends to take a pretty egotistical view on this. Last is the area I work most in, is diversity. My own work is focusing on K-12 education and encouraging students from underserved and underrepresented communities to participate in AI before they enter college. I want to bet in this audience there is AI for all alumni. Anyone from, yes, see? So these are students who participated in our program in high school and encouraging, especially from underserved community, to imagine they have a role to play in AI.
So thank you all for joining us. Fei-Fei, thank you for giving us so much to reflect upon and to think about. For those of you who are still looking for PhD thesis topics, I think there is a lot of, there is a richness of ideas that Fei-Fei has shared with us. So let's thank Fei-Fei again.
Thank you.
And,